Joining us now to react, Senate Foreign Relations Committee member and chairman of the Senate Energy Committee, Utah Senator Mike Lee. Senator, thanks for joining us. We do have some breaking news there. The fact that they've actually got a meeting now set up to start some dialogue with China. What's your reaction?
Yeah, look, it's interesting stuff. Loved President Trump's reaction at the very end, by the way. Never say never, as in you're saying there's a chance. As far as China, the fact that these conversations are occurring is historic. It's significant. And I think it's an opportunity for us to clear the air on a lot of the bad, unfair trade practices that China has been perpetuating on the people of the United States of America for a long time. So I look forward to these conversations and seeing how they unfold. I don't think they're going to be easy for either party. I think they're especially not going to be easy for China, which frankly has a lot more to lose in this than we do.
Keep talking about that, Senator, that speaking to somebody who was just on the ground in China, there's no American presence there for the most part. We, our nation, our companies have never been given access to that market. And we have given them the keys to the kingdom. And what did China do with it? They unleashed COVID on the United States. They unleashed fentanyl. They unleashed death on the United States after we enriched them and brought them into the developed world. So why even bother? Like, starve them out. And that's essentially some of the message that we got from President Trump today. Like, cut them off. Why not?
Yeah, no, look, you raise a fair point. And that's before you even get to the intellectual property theft, the other kinds of theft that go on there, the unfair trade practices, tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, the unfair competition that U.S. businesses that do have some operation based there often face, at least indirectly. And so you make a fair point, and that's why I say China needs us a lot more than we need China. There's a lot that's manufactured in China that can, in time, be outsourced to somewhere else. Look, at a minimum, I think decoupling from China is a potential outcome here. Of course, there's got to be a pathway to do that. If you fall from a tall building, you need something to slow you down. It's not the fall that kills you, it's the abrupt halt at the end of the fall. And so we need a transition period if we are going to decouple for U.S. firms with some manufacturing there to figure out what their plans are moving forward. Perhaps that's what they could focus on if the end game is to decouple completely. I'm not sure what the president's plans are, but I do know that he's fired up, and I trust this president when it comes to negotiating better, fairer trade terms, which currently we haven't had with China and haven't had for a very long time.
Chairman, let me move on to another topic I know you've been a champion on, which is the REINS Act. The idea that we got to change the way the massive rules are promulgated throughout all of government. What are you going to do there, and can it work in this one big, beautiful bill called reconciliation?
Yeah, the big, beautiful bill needs to contain a provision called the REINS Act. The REINS Act would require us to comply with what Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution already requires, which is federal law cannot be made without passage in the House and in the Senate, followed by presentment to the president, who can sign it, veto it, or acquiesce to it. But over the last 8.5 decades, we've had a Congress that has been willing increasingly to delegate the lawmaking power to unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. We pass a law saying we shall have good law in Area X, and we hereby delegate to Agency Y the power to make these rules and regulations, which are just federal law. They can put you in prison. They can shut down your business if you don't obey them. And so they are federal law, but never consented to by the American people. Jason, last year alone, the Biden administration, just in 2024, added 100,000 pages of new regulations to the books. Those regulations alone, just from 2024, added $1.5 trillion in regulatory compliance costs to the economy. This is a backdoor invisible tax on the poor. It's killing us. We're up to $3-4 trillion now in total regulatory compliance costs. The REINS Act would fix that, because it would say before any of those regulations take effect that have a major impact on the economy, they would first have to be passed by both houses of Congress and sent to the president. This is absolutely necessary to secure our economic growth and to help us dig out of this $37 trillion debt, along with smart spending cuts.
Can you wedge it into the big, beautiful bill under reconciliation? Does it meet the Senate standard?
I believe that we can.
Okay.
In order to meet the Senate standard for budget reconciliation, it has to have budgetary impact, which means that it has to bring about changes to mandatory spending or to revenues. and then it's subject to a number of other rules. It can't touch Social Security, for example, and it can't be a budgetary impact that's merely incidental to another policy issue. We believe we can do it here because in myriad circumstances, these rules and regulations do bring about changes in revenues to the government, or in some cases, changes to mandatory outlays.
Yeah, Senator, I also want to ask you about this idea of these activist judges. You had Speaker Johnson saying the idea of actually, reining in these people and actually offering to impeach them, that's not off the table.
Here's what he had to say. Let's listen to that before we get to you, Senator.
Are judicial impeachments off the table for the rest of this Congress?
No, look, impeachments are never off the table if it's merited, but you got to get the votes for it, right? And it's a very high burden, and frankly, the bar is high crimes and misdemeanors.
So what are you going to do, Senator?
Well, first of all, I don't serve in the House of Representatives. The impeachment process starts over there. It's really up to them. And as he points out, it's a matter of arithmetic. If you can get to the votes, then these things become more likely. I will tell you this, Jason, with every passing day, there seems to be another judge, another woke leftist judge, who wants to step into the arena and shed the judicial role and start cosplaying as the President of the United States. That our Constitution cannot countenance and does not allow. With every passing day that they do this, the momentum in the House, the calls of urgency from our constituents to elected lawmakers, including to the House of Representatives, go up. I don't doubt that if this continues, at some point you'll start to see impeachment proceedings against some of those judges, cosplaying as presidents, will gain momentum.
Senator Lee, before we go, you have introduced a bill to protect children online, which is actually the law of the land now against predators, but you will hold app stores accountable. Tell us more about it.
When you send your child to the health clinic at his or her school, get their temperature checked, even take a Tylenol or something like that, they have to have parental consent. They have to have parental consent to go on a field trip. They shouldn't be able to transact business with a tech giant through the App Store, consuming a product, downloading an app that could harm them, any more than we should allow children to buy cigarettes or alcohol or any other potentially harmful product that's not for children and could be misused to harm children. There should be parental consent. The App Store Accountability Act is my bill that would fix that by requiring parental consent for a child to download an app on a device.
Interesting. Chairman, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, thanks so much for joining us tonight on The Bottom Line.